Some people have a sanctuary, a church, a quiet park, a kitchen filled with the smell of baking bread. Mine was the humming silence of my corner desk at Etha Innovations. My kingdom was built on 3 monitors, the landscape was built of endless streams of data, and my crown was a worn-out pair of noise-canceling headphones. To everyone else, I was Sloane, the quiet data analyst, the one who kept her head down, the ghost in the machine. They saw my silence as shyness, my focus as a lack of social skill. They were half right. People were a messy, unpredictable code I could never quite debug. But data was a perfect, honest story waiting to be read, and I was its best translator. Then Jax was hired, and my quiet kingdom was invaded by a hurricane of charisma. I remember the first day he swaggered into the open plan office. He didn't just walk, he made an entrance. He was all bright white smiles, firm handshakes, and easy laughter that echoed just a little too loud. "Jax Sterling," he'd said, leaning against my cubicle wall. "And you must be Sloane. I've heard the legends. The data wizard who makes the numbers sing." I just mumbled something, my eyes flicking back to my screen. But a part of me, the lonely, proud part, preened. He saw me. That was his genius. He saw asterisk everyone. He remembered the names of people's kids, their favorite sports teams, the coffee order they mentioned once in passing. He built a network of social debt and used it as his personal currency. I was so busy looking at the data trees, I didn't see him slowly, methodically purchasing the entire forest. The turning point was Project Chimera, a multi-million-dollar defense contract that had the entire department buzzing. It was a complex, gnarly data problem, exactly my kind of puzzle. While others were having strategy meetings and making pretty PowerPoint decks, I was down in the trenches with the raw data. And after 3 weeks of living on cold coffee and code, I found it. The key. It was an algorithm, so elegant it almost brought a tear to my eye. It could predict system failures before they even showed up as a flicker on a diagnostic report. It was my masterpiece. And like a fool, I showed it to him. "Jax, look at this," I said, my voice tight with excitement. I pulled up the core framework on my center monitor. He leaned in, his expensive cologne washing over me. He was silent for a full minute, his eyes scanning the cascading lines of code. I saw the moment his brain switched from polite interest to pure, unadulterated avarice. It was like a shutter clicking behind his eyes. "Sloane, this is it," he breathed. "This is the whole game, you're a genius." I should have seen the calculation in his gaze. I should have recognized the possessive tone in his voice. But I was starved for recognition, and his praise was a drug. I let my guard down. The sabotage started small. A glitch that erased a day's work. A misplaced note with a crucial variable. He offered to help me compile a report, and suddenly my pristine data would be filled with tiny, almost imperceptible errors that took me hours to find and fix. Then came the whispers. I started hearing murmurs around the coffee machine. "Jax is really carrying the Chimera project, isn't he?" I heard Sloane is struggling. Good thing he's there to keep things on track. I'd confront him, my voice trembling with anger. "Did you tell Harrison I couldn't handle the pressure?" He'd just look at me with those wounded puppy dog eyes. "Sloane, no. I said you were brilliant but burning out. I'm trying to protect you. We're a team." He was so convincing I almost believed him. Almost. The final blow came the night before the Project Chimera proposal was due. I had finished. The model was perfect, a symphony of logic and prediction. I uploaded it to the secure server, a wave of exhausted relief washing over me. Jax was there, of course. "You did it. I knew you could. Come on, let's celebrate. I brought you a coffee." He handed me a latte from my favorite place. It was sweet, thoughtful. I remember the taste was slightly bitter, but I was too tired to care. The next morning, I walked into an ambush. My keycard didn't work. Security was at my desk, already packing my personal belongings into a cardboard box. Mr. Harrison stood there, his face a mask of cold disappointment. "Sloane," he said, his voice like gravel, "we're terminating your employment for gross misconduct and industrial espionage." The world tilted. What? No, that's not. Jack stepped forward. He looked genuinely pained. I'm so sorry, Sloane. I had to report it. I found the data packets you'd queued for transfer to our competitors. I didn't want to believe it. He held out a printout of fake emails sent from a server spoofed to look like mine. They were flawless. A perfect forgery. I was a ghost, all right. He was erasing me. They marched me out of the building past a sea of wide-eyed colleagues. The last thing I saw was Jax's face. And for a single, unguarded moment, as our eyes met, the mask of concern fell away and I saw it. Not triumph, not even malice. It was boredom. I was a problem he had already solved. The door hissed shut behind me. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my box of things, my world in ashes. The data had lied. Or rather, I had failed to read the most important data set of all, the human heart. But I was a quick learner, and my education was just beginning. The months that followed were a flatline. I was unemployed, unemployable. The blacklist in our industry is invisible but absolute. I was a pariah. I lived on my savings until they ran out, and then I lived on a desperate, simmering rage. It was the only thing that kept me warm. My salvation came from an unlikely source, Leo, the gruff, kind-hearted systems architect from Etha. He'd always slip me a new piece of hardware to test, and we'd share a quiet coffee during late nights. He found me through a former colleague. He didn't say much, just handed me a thumb drive over a cheap diner coffee. I never believed it, he grunted. Jax had me set up a new isolated server backup the night you were fired, said it was for sensitive Chimera data. I ran the logs. His terminal was in your files for over an hour that night. He wasn't just accessing them. He was replicating your entire directory and planting his own forged packets. He was also pinging an external IP registered to a private investigator known for corporate dirt. The data, the beautiful, honest data, it was my lifeline. I could have gone to the press. I could have hired a lawyer. It would have been a messy, drawn-out battle I couldn't afford to fight. Jax would have used his charm and the company's resources to bury me in legal fees and doubt. He would have won. No, a direct attack was what he expected, what he was prepared for. I needed to become something he couldn't predict, someone he would never see coming. I needed to become a ghost he couldn't erase. I needed to become a phantom that haunted his every waking moment. And so, I forged Stella Cross. Stella was my weapon. I spent my last $1,000 on a new wardrobe, sharp, angular business suits in black and navy. I cut my long, mousy brown hair into a severe, platinum blonde bob. I spent hours in front of a mirror, not practicing a disguise, but exorcising Sloane. I practiced a lower, colder tone of voice. I learned to walk not like I was trying to get somewhere, but like I owned the space I was moving through. I built her a legend. A brilliant, notoriously difficult freelance data forensics specialist and corporate ethicist from Switzerland. I created a flawless digital footprint, a fake PhD, a consulting website, glowing testimonials from fictional European CEOs. I used the skills Jax had taught me, deception, social engineering, but I weaponized them. I took on small jobs, catching an embezzler at a mid-level firm, exposing a data breach a company was trying to hide. With each success, Stella Cross's reputation grew. She was the person you hired when you needed to find the rotten beam in your foundation, and she wasn't afraid to use a sledgehammer. I was no longer Sloane, the victim. I was Stella, the avenger, and I was ready for war. A year to the day after my firing, the call came. Etha Innovations was in trouble. The product built on my stolen Chimera algorithm had a critical, public flaw. Their stock was plummeting. Their golden boy, Jax, was floundering. They needed a scapegoat, or a savior. They put out a global call for a top-tier forensic auditor to diagnose the problem and restore investor confidence. The job description might as well have had Stella Cross's picture on it. The interview was the most satisfying performance of my life. I walked back into Etha, my stiletto heels clicking on the polished floor like a countdown. The déjà vu was a physical force. I sat in the same conference room where I'd been fired. Across from me sat Jax and a weary-looking Mr. Harrison. Jax had gained weight, and the pressure had sanded the edges off his charm. He looked at Stella Cross with a mixture of fear and desperate need. "Your reputation is formidable, Ms. Cross," Harrison began. "As it should be," I replied, my Stella voice crisp, my accent faint but precise. "I've reviewed your public data. The flaw is not a bug. It is a foundational failure. A child could see it. You are lucky I am available." I spent the next hour eviscerating their entire operation. I spoke of conceptual debt and ethical rot. I questioned Jax's decisions with a cold, surgical precision that left him stammering. I saw the terror in his eyes. He was terrified of this woman, and he was hearing her because of it. The irony was a vintage wine I savored. He hired me on the spot. For the next month, I was a ghost in my own haunted house. By day, I was Stella, the ruthless efficiency expert, fixing the problems Jax's incompetence had created. I had full, unrestricted access to the entire ecosystem. I walked the halls, a silent judgment in a designer suit, watching my former colleagues scurry away from me. By night, I was the architect of Jax's ruin. I didn't just fix the code, I studied every line he and his team had written. I found the backdoors he'd built for himself, the sloppy patches, the arrogant, lazy work. I compiled it all. But I did more. I planted a digital diary, a hidden, encrypted file that appeared to be Jax's personal log. In it, he narcissistically detailed the entire plot to frame me. Sloane was so trusting. The coffee was a nice touch. By the time she figures it out, she'll be unemployable. The algorithm is mine now. I made sure the digital fingerprints pointed irrevocably back to him. I also used my access to the archived security system. The footage from the night I was framed was long gone, officially. But Leo had shown me how to find the ghosts in the machine, the fragments that were never truly deleted. I recovered enough. And with the same AI tools I used for data prediction, I created a short, devastatingly clear deepfake video. It showed Jax, at my desk, in the middle of the night, planting the fake evidence. The stage was set for ETHA's annual investor gala. The event of the year. Jax was to be crowned Innovator of the Year. He was at the absolute peak of his stolen success. The ballroom was a sea of sequins and self-congratulation. I stood at the back, Stella Cross, a silent guest of honor. Leo was outside in a van, our command center. Jax took the stage, beaming. The massive screen behind him showed his face, magnified. He began his speech, oozing false modesty. "When I first conceived of the Chimera algorithm," I pulled out my phone and sent a single, pre-written text to Leo. The screen flickered. Jax's face vanished, replaced by the deepfake video. There he was, clear as day, planting the evidence on my computer. The gasps in the room were a symphony. Jax stammered, "What is this? A hack? This is fake." Then the audio, his voice, a perfect AI replica from the diary, boomed through the speakers. "Harrison is so easily manipulated. A few compliments and he'll believe anything. The board are sheep. This company is my personal ATM." As he stood there, paralyzed, I began to walk. I walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. I stepped onto the stage, the lights blinding. I took the microphone from his limp hand. The room fell silent. "My name is not Stella Cross," I said, my voice calm, clear, and utterly Sloane's. I let the accent drop. "My name is Sloane. You fired me. You blacklisted me. You stole my work and you tried to destroy my name." I turned to the audience, to the cameras. "But you made one fatal mistake, Jax. You confused my integrity for a weakness. You mistook my silence for surrender." I looked directly at him, my gaze holding all the fury of the last year. "You didn't just sabotage me. You forged me. You turned me into someone you could never hope to control. And as you're now discovering, the data always tells the truth." I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a deafening thud. I didn't wait for the arrest. I didn't wait for the apologies. I walked out of that ballroom, through the silent, stunned crowd, and I didn't look back. They offered me my job back. They offered me a fortune. I turned it all down. I didn't want my old kingdom back. I had built a new one. Today, I run my own consulting firm, Veritas Analytics. Our only client rule is impeccable ethics. Leo is my partner. We are drowning in business. A reporter asked me last week if I ever think about Jax, if the revenge was sweet. I told her the truth. Revenge wasn't the goal. It was a byproduct. The goal was to reclaim my narrative. Jax thought he was the author of my story. But he was just a badly written villain in the first act. I'm the one who wrote the ending. And it was a bestseller.